Ah, there we go. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the BAMF podcast. I am your host, Mike Lafferty, here with a Mount Olympus of geek and RPG talent in the room. Before I introduce them, let me play our contractually mandated opening music. I apologize, but my parole officer has a kid who's, anyway, I gotta play it. Just 1 second. And that professional, high quality musical intro assures you, gentle viewers, that this is a high quality, high production value podcast. Only the finest geeky conversation, gluten free, free from red dye number 5, farm to table for your podcast listening pleasure. Still free for now, but with the tariffs, it might go up. So enjoy it while you can. And we are here to talk about 90s superhero cartoons and the RPGs they inspired with a whole bunch of RPG guys. Starting next to me in the Brady Bunch grid is Len Parthian Pimentel, the Prowlers and Paragons guy. Len, how are you this evening?
I'm just fine. How are you?
Nice. That is a very nice microphone you have in front of you, sir. I am covetous.
I got it specifically to make you covetous. So that I'm so far 10 for 10 then. Beautiful.
It works. And next to Len, man who has a very sexy voice this evening is Mr. Jacob Blackman. How you doing, Jacob?
I am well.
Oh boy, listen to that golden throat. That is a beautiful thing. Jumping down directly beneath me, in the Brady Bunch screen is Mr. Alex Thomas. He is the Mutants and Masterminds developer. Alex, how are you this evening?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you, sir. And last but not least, you've probably seen him on social media as Ted Bunny, Mr. Bill Keys, who is the guy behind Harmless Forest Creature Games. Bill, how are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good this afternoon. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate you being on, sir. Always a pleasure. So why are we talking about 90s superhero cartoons? That seems random. Well, a couple weeks back, Jacob, myself, and Owen Stevens were talking about 90s superhero movies, which is an oddly pulpy subgenre. I hadn't realized it, but and the conversation started straying into talking about Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series. If you see Alex's background came up too, and the X-Men. Well, I got Wolverine scratch right here over my right shoulder, but it's an X-Men promo. But so we decided we'd do a podcast just talking about 90s superheroes cartoon, because it might have been the first decade where we actually had a lot of halfway decent superhero cartoons you could watch. Prior to that, back in the 80s and 70s, we were kind of making do with, the 70s was Super Friends. In the 80s, we did have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Depending how you felt about that cartoon, whether it was good or not, that was there. So, kind of basking in 90s nostalgia. I thought we would go around the table and talk about everyone's favorite cartoon, and we had the same 2 or 3, and then we would talk about least favorite, and then go around and talk about hot takes or crazy opinions. So, who wants Len? I see intensity in your eyes there, sir. I suspect you have an opinion to share. Whatever.
I was born with intensity in my eyes, so whether or not I have a particularly strong opinion, you will see this expression regardless. Or it might mean that the Cheetos didn't go down well. But this is tough, honestly, because this is one of those making me choose between my children. I don't know that I have one that I would say is a perennial favorite. I can say that during the 90s, probably at that time, the X-Men cartoon was probably my favorite. And I think it was fairly influential because, that music is still pretty potent. And for that matter, the MCU is still using imagery and sounds from that 90s cartoon. So I don't think it's just me. But I think it was a neat combination of, look, X-Men was the sort of teen angst, emo superhero group. Probably the DC version of that would have been the Teen Titans. And it would have been interesting if DC had come out with a Teen Titans cartoon to sort of compete with it at that time with a sort of similar emotional level. But they didn't, and so it was really X-Men. And I thought it was pretty amazing. And they had some sort of story arcs that went across multiple episodes, which now obviously is assumed and whatnot. But back then, that was pretty groundbreaking. I mean, it was the X-Men cartoon and Babylon 5 and soap operas. That's that, and there you go. So, it had a lot of, even though it had a lot, it screams this being this tweener space between the kiddie cartoons and the grown-up cartoons. But it held a very warm, it still holds a very warm spot in my heart. But at that time, yeah, everything else, and there's a lot of other good stuff, but everything else came after X-Men.
I can see that. I mean, some people liked it that they brought it back. X-Men '97 might have been the best thing on Disney Plus a couple years ago. So
Yep.
I would say I'm a big fan. Jacob, how about you? What was your favorite?
Well, I could spend all day gushing on the DC animated universe because there is no denying that the Batman animated series, the Superman animated series, and all that eventually evolved into Justice League was just magnificence, you know? And X-Men, and subsequently the Spider, he found her in the meantime. So, what's that story about? Will that story ever be told? We'll find out.
I didn't know about that. That's kind of cool.
But in terms of my absolute favorite 90s superhero cartoon, I have to go with Disney's Gargoyles. I can't think of anything that was more innovative and original than that show.
Okay. I liked it a lot. I watched the first season, kind of drifted away, but I liked how they had the Next Generation cast on there. That was fun.
Yeah, the way Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, of course, played two of the major villains across the entirety of the series as voice actors. But as the series continues, you will just hear pretty much everyone from Star Trek start to show up, as a one episode villain. There was like the episode where they went to Africa and fought the spider god Anansi, and the Anansi was voiced by LeVar Burton.
That is kind of cool. It's kind of weird how that's the one big thing from the '90s that seems like it hasn't been revived.
Greg Weisman has had to avoid going back to Gargoyles because there has now been so much fan fiction in regards to the future of Gargoyles that if he continued any story, some fan could literally say, "Hey, you stole my idea."
Wait, is that a real thing? Because I mean, if that was true, no one could write. They couldn't do any more Star Wars or Star Trek movies. I mean,
it has recently become a thing. It's one of the reasons why Greg Weisman is incredibly loath to post on social media about shows he's working on, which is too bad because I want more Young Justice.
Yeah, for real.
I think we all want more Young Justice, but.
So yes, Gargoyles is my favorite '90s superhero show.
Excellent choice. Amazing
Great
show.
shows.
Mr. Thomas, what's your opinion on this, sir? What's your favorite '90s superhero cartoon?
Well, I was a baby when the '90s started, so
Oh, God damn it! Okay.
Wow.
but no, this was my introduction to the genre, so this was very, very formative for me. That's where I get all my iconic versions of the characters that I love so much. I wasn't a comic book reader; I was a cartoon watcher growing up. So the DC animated universe has always been my absolute favorite series. I will throw, since everybody seems to agree that it's the best, or it's at least what I love about it is it's so iconic and so like genre defining for cartoons like this. I just want to give a little love to Darkwing Duck because Darkwing Duck was my jam.
That's so awesome. Yes.
Yeah. Weirdly, I thought it was like a parody of Batman the Animated Series, but Darkwing Duck came out first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that either because it feels so much like an answer to Batman the Animated Series. But Darkwing was in 1991. Batman the Animated Series was in 1992.
Oh, I did not know that.
Unless Mask of the Phantasm came out before the show did, but I don't remember the order of operations.
It's probably more in response to the release of the Batman Tim Burton film.
Yeah. It's clearly a response to the Burton films, and the Batman TV show clearly takes its primary inspiration from those.
Yeah, it's fun how everything just sort of feeds into each other in that sort of way, and a lot of that is how I approach storytelling and just in general. I love the connectedness of it, the pulpiness of it, the fact that there can be some episodes that are silly.
So is Lunchpad McQuack sort of like the Agent Coulson of the
You must be.
of the Duck universe in Disney because he shows up in all these cartoons?
Mhm.
Okay,
That's the one thing I love about the new DuckTales is they bring so much of Darkwing Duck and Gizmo Duck into that universe, and they give Launchpad that sort of interconnecting material for all of them. Have we talked about least favorite yet? Because I do have a least favorite, which I know is hard to find in this decade.
I'll tell you what. We'll go to Bill next and come back to you. I just wanted to call out Len because Len, you'd mentioned to me that the DC animated stuff, like Alex said, was kind of a big inspiration for you in terms of Prowlers and Paragons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I had been writing the game as a teenager or in my early 20s, it probably would have been more the comic books. I mean, back then I would have been using my stylus by candlelight, but the point is it would have been probably more the comic books. But by the time I was working on Prowlers and Paragons, I was a little bit of an older person. I was more interested in the heroic mythic archetype than in the badass Iron Age-iness of the heroes. And as such, obviously the comic books are huge inspirations. The comic books were huge inspirations, but I was looking for something sort of light and fun and for color, because at that point I was already an early stage adult, and the crushing realities of real life required an escape.
That's fair. Hey, before we move on to Bill in just one second, I wanted to plug your website, Mobius Worlds Publishing. You want to find out more about Prowlers and Paragons? It's an insanely fun game, and check it out. It's kind of the big dog right now in new indie RPG, superhero RPGs. And Bill, to Bunny Keys, you also make content for Prowlers and Paragons. People can find that at tinyurl.com/harmless-forest-creature. This takes you to Bill's Drive-Thru RPG. There he has a virtual panoply, cornucopia of products for Prowlers and Paragons. So, Bill, what is your favorite 90s superhero cartoon?
Yeah, so I have a confession to make is that I didn't have a TV throughout most of the 90s. So I never saw Gargoyles. I never saw the Spider-Man series. I saw a couple of episodes of the X-Men.
So Bill,
there's a whole lot that I missed.
Is there a story there we should talk into, or is that pry into, or is that not so much?
That I didn't have a TV?
Were you raised Amish or something, or what?
No,
Were you in jail?
I was poor. I was a grad student. I was poor, and I lived in a little tiny basement apartment. And I just didn't have a TV. When I did finally get a TV, I didn't have cable. So all I could watch were VHS tapes. If you remember those of you who are old enough. Alex might not.
Yeah. I can't watch them anymore, but I've got some on a right back here.
Yeah.
I have seen. I had VHS tapes growing up.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have seen Goosebumps: The Vanishing, but there's a scene where some of the kids in there say, "What is a Vahas?" when they encounter this tape. And that is one of the first. That's the first time I felt old watching a young person interact with technology.
Yeah, so my favorite animated series from the '90s came very, very late in the '90s, right at the end. Would be Batman Beyond,
No.
which
Is
sorry,
that one of you guys? What's that?
that was me.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
So yeah, it came out in 1999, and I had seen some of the Batman animated series. I'd seen some of the Superman, but yeah, the Batman Beyond was just incredible. I love the cyberpunk feel mixed with superheroes. The wild animation, which was kind of based off of the Tim universe, but had its own style. And the villains, again, very much like Batman villains, but they were unique to Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good stuff. One of my favorite episodes, it might have been a two-parter, of Justice League Unlimited, was when they crossed over at Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
That was very fun. I've always wanted to see more Terry McGinnis. I've been disappointed that they keep making more and more movies about Bruce Wayne, and Terry just kind of shows up in a comic book every half decade or so.
I'd love to see something like Michael Keaton as the old Bruce as his mentor. Right? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be awesome.
He was in the new Crisis on Infinite Earths movie for 2 seconds.
He was, and someday when someone pirates Batgirl onto the web, we'll get to see that, where he apparently plays Batman as well. So, yeah. That is a bummer. Alex, you had a least favorite movie or least favorite cartoon. Before we dive in, I plugged Len and Bill. I wanted to mention that Alex works for the Big Daddy of superhero RPGs. He is the developer for Mutants and Masterminds, which is sort of the 500-pound gorilla in the marketplace. And you can find the latest and greatest stuff for Mutants and Masterminds at greenroninstore.com/collections/mutants-masterminds.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or if you read the reviews about the Marvel superhero role-playing game, we're the old reliable workhorse. Which did not feel good. On the New York Times' review, I was like, come on, y'all.
The New York Times reviews RPGs?
That is damning with faint praise.
It was just because it was Marvel. It had the Marvel branding, so they're all over.
Well,
It might have been Forbes. It was Forbes or the New York Times. I don't remember which one it was.
Well, so it's good to be mentioned. I mean, it's good that someone's talking about you guys as the old reliable warhorse instead of, cranking out champions or, phase rip. So your least favorite 90s cartoon, sir? Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I think, and this is indicative of sort of what we were talking about, where a lot of the cartoons we're lifting up are very iconic and not of the time period.
Mm-hmm.
I did not enjoy the Avengers United They Stand.
That was bad. I will agree with you there.
That was not a good show.
The lineup was bad. The interpretation of the characters was bad. And it was very pouches and guns and just I felt like they were trying to cater to me as a 9-year-old, and I even knew then that was not the right move.
So that's one I should be glad I missed.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, meanwhile, they had the Iron Man series right over here, which was essentially Forceworks. And they were doing iconic things with that, and that looked great. And then they put out this crap.
Yeah, I was like, why is Hawkeye in a
They
battle
all
suit?
wearing like Iron Man armor? Is that what's going on?
It's got a lot of toy potential built in, I think is what they were doing there.
That's super. I'm watching this like so many possible toys. Yeah. And
I think
toy
it lasted-
equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one season I got out of this, but it was a very odd choice because 9-year-olds at the time weren't really reading the Avengers. So I wasn't quite sure who this was for.
Yeah, I love that they have Thor, Cap, and Iron Man on top
And
of
they
everybody.
No.
They're like, no, I promise this is Marvel. Don't turn away.
I mean, I'm sure you know, Alex, but perhaps some of our younger viewers might not understand the position Marvel was in the 90s, which was basically the X-Men were huge, Spider-Man was huge, everything else, not so much.
Everything else was bankrupt.
Yeah. When they announced the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man movie, that 25 years ago or whatever it was. No, it was maybe just 20 years ago. I was like, well, I'm going to go see it, but it's probably going to bomb because who the fuck cares about Iron Man? And everyone in America does these days. So
Turns out all of us.
yeah. Bill, going back to you, so don't forget, do you have a least favorite 90s superhero cartoon?
I do have a least favorite. And I don't know how I saw this because, again, this was in the 90s when I didn't have a TV. Maybe I had a friend tape it for me or something, but the Wildcats cartoon, based off of the Jim Lee Image comic series.
Mm-hmm. I've heard it was really bad. Can you tell me about it?
I watched every episode of it, I'm pretty sure, although there were probably only about 15 episodes because it did not last a full season. But yeah, it was
Demonites.
Yeah, I think I was really into the Iron Age. I still am into the Iron Age, as Lynn will tell you. But yeah, that was not a good cartoon.
And it's a shame because, I mean, there was so much excitement about all the Image stuff back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of came and went, unfortunately. You know, I was thinking the other day about all the comics from the 90s that we just don't see much anymore. Like, hell, Spawn. We used to be huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Speaking of, was there a Spawn cartoon in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes,
There's
it
even a
was
movie.
terrible.
Was
Movie that
bad?
had John Leguizamo and
That was the movie. That was the live action movie. I think the cartoon was voiced by actually the same guy who did the voice of Goliath in Gargoyles, whose name is either Keith David or David Keith, and I always transpose his first and last names. I'm even friends with him on Facebook, so go figure. But yeah, I still transpose names. But amazing actor and incredible voice actor. But yeah, he played Spawn in the animated one for HBO. Was that for HBO?
Yes, it was for HBO,
yeah.
so they could show all the nudity and sex they wanted.
Right.
So was it
90s HBO?
90s HBO? You try to watch it quietly. Hope your mom and dad don't hear. So it was not worth checking out. It's not good.
I liked it.
How much do you enjoy watching Spawn look at everything that's happening on a rooftop and not doing anything about it?
Well, let me ask you a question. Is he looking at stuff at the rooftop while that beautiful red cape flaps in the wind? Oh, so dramatically?
I
Yes.
was going to say, that sounds like a perfect adaptation of the comics.
Yeah. It's all about the look.
I think they worked really hard to try to capture a certain feel. And it's by far not the only 90s Supers cartoon that was going for a particular feel. I'm with Bill that Wildcats was a car crash of a cartoon and is also my least favorite. Having said that, I've seen every episode multiple times. But between you've got Spawn, you've got the Max, you've got I think at least one other. There was Aeon Flux. There were some cartoons that attempted to go for a feel, and they might not have succeeded, but they were trying to do something, I think. And I, for what it's worth, actually enjoyed most of those, notwithstanding some of the challenges they faced.
Yeah, I think Spawn's definitely a character who gets by on vibes.
Yeah,
I think if you are in that, I feel like if that's an energy you enjoy, then Spawn's a great character for you. If that's not an energy you're into, it's hard to.
You could probably say the same about Batman from the cartoon. You know, the Batman as in the 90s cartoon also. That is a very vibe-heavy show.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that presents a certain kind of Batman. So, Static Shock was also awesome. Yeah.
But it is not from the 90s. It is from 2000.
What? Are you sure?
Yep.
Well, they crossed over with Batman Beyond.
He crossed over from Batman Beyond in Static Shock, not with Batman Beyond.
Okay.
Oh, you're right. It was 2000, 2004. So it is borderline, but just over the line. So that's about it. So, but yeah, that character the comic was big. Everyone was watching the cartoon, and now it's just, I wish
anything Dwayne McDuffie touched was amazing. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He had a golden era.
I kind of wish they would just take 5 years off making Batman Superman movies and work through characters like Static Shock or
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a couple different Milestone characters you could do stuff with. Jacob, did you give us your least favorite yet?
I had not.
Okay.
I will be forced to choose Street Sharks, the blatant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ripoff series. Which
What is so bad about it?
Street Sharks. I mean, what more do I have to say? It's jawsome.
Wow.
You're not selling me off it, buddy. Try harder.
We don't like pizza. Pizza is disgusting. We like burgers and fries.
Oh, wow.
It was lacking the artistic integrity of the.
It's
They're
terrible.
built like finger puppets.
I think that might have been. Well,
Wow.
once again, this was pretty much a 30-minute toy commercial.
And so, did you actually remember this cartoon, or did you do research before the podcast? And I mean, either way is going to earn my respect. I just got to ask.
Oh no, I this was a show I had watched back in the day, and I was like, eventually I was like, why am I watching this? This is shit.
I feel like I wasn't a cool enough kid to watch this. I feel like
Yeah, there was a kid across the street from me who watched this. He had, I think, undiagnosed ADHD and a skateboard and wore a lot of flannel. And I think he was a target demo for that. But,
yeah, I was not rad enough. I was not a radical enough youth.
So, Len, what is your least favorite of this milieu?
Oh, circling back, Wildcats, which, as I mentioned, I've seen every episode more than once, and there's so many things about it that didn't work. My friends and I, to this day, will still occasionally call each other and just go, "They're Damonites," because Voodoo's only line for I think a couple of episodes was Voodoo in the show wasn't nearly as sexy as the character from the comic, and really all that she could do was see these Damonite creatures for their true forms, and so she would in every episode sort of go, "They're Damonites," and that became a recurring line and has been for 2 decades now with some of my friends. So there you go. It was, and the guys were like extra muscular because this was, not your daddy's superheroes.
Yeah.
These are heroes who use steroids and whatever. So it was again an attempt to capture a feel and maybe a slightly less artful attempt. I think Spawn is improved in the attempt to capture a vibe genre when you bring Wildcats into the equation and compare the two.
Yeah,
That's fair.
The Max. Has anybody seen The Max?
Yeah. Yep.
Was that worth watching? Was it any good? Was it? I know it was a vibe because The Max was a vibe.
I'll give you my 2 cents, the very personal answer, which is I enjoyed it, and at the end, I love shows that have a mystery as long as you're going to provide me a resolution that satisfies it. If you tease me and it's a mystery and you don't actually have an answer, I'm looking at you, J.J. Abrams, then you're a horrible human being, and I will end up hating the show. So Lost could have been great, became a catastrophe. The show Alias with Jennifer Garner, same concept. Hey, it's also J.J. Abrams. This show was kind of the same, where you're like, what is going on? And by the time you get to the end, they sort of come to a resolution and you would get some sense of what's going on. Does it all make sense? Nah. Was there some recreational pharmaceuticals involved in the production of the show? Almost certainly. But overall, it was different. And again, certainly better than Wildcats. And was certainly trying to capture a feel. And some of it did that.
I'm feeling something. I don't know what it is from this trailer. The intro sequence, whatever it is. Wow.
Yeah, this is the
trailer's
episode.
kind of freaking me out a little bit.
I'd give it.
I thought you guys were saying The Mask, not The Max.
No, I'd give it a strong B-, and that looks like Wildcats up top there.
Let me see. Oh wait, was there a cartoon called Cops in the 90s?
Very probably.
Probably.
It was the
Yeah,
90s.
they were
Probably
like high tech cyber super cops.
another
Okay.
toy
And then they made a
commercial.
live action version where the bad boys. What are we gonna do?
So-
this is more super agents and superheroes, isn't it?
Hmm.
Look at that guy's
Jesus,
chin.
wasn't it?
That's a serious chin.
That was a black Clark Kent. I know who that is.
Yeah. Oh, it's a bro. Oh, crime! Crime has happened here. Oh, he's running. He's probably the bad guy.
That guy enters the room crotch first every time.
I wonder if this is the same art company that did Wildcats, because it's a very similar feel to the artwork.
Wow.
It looks like it.
Although it's actually more expressive, this artwork, than the artwork
Yeah.
in Wildcats.
This is reminds me of Mask, but it's a little more cartoony.
Yeah.
I don't think Mask
Yeah.
had any bad guys who could open up their chest and reveal, 50 cal. But
Yeah, it's kind of a Dick Tracy sort of the villains.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
I can
Not
see
quite
that.
human.
Question:
Sorry,
Jake,
yeah.
you mentioned gargoyles. Do we qualify gargoyles as a super? I mean, I can 100% see why, and yet it almost fell in this sort of weird, unique niche of quasi. Like it was so. There's some things that are so 90s, so late 90s. Blade and a Vampire the Apocalypse and gargoyles. All very different, yet they're all so wonderfully, beautifully, amazingly 90s. I wouldn't have thought of it, although I can absolutely see that they are a superhero show, at least after a fashion. And it gets even more wild with seasons 2 and 3 when the storytelling they turn it up to 11.
we're watching the
Did we, have
intro.
a, did we have a word for urban fantasy in the 90s? Is that a thing? Was that a genre at the time?
I don't really think so. I mean, there had been some. I mean, that's what Anne Rice was writing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So, yeah. It was, I don't know if it was birthed in the 90s, but it certainly exploded in the 90s. But I don't know when the term urban fantasy was actually coined or came into common parlance. That I don't know.
Yeah.
So we were just watching the trailer for SWAT Cats, which was a forgotten 90s show. And I got to tell you, I think they stole some scenes from G-Force. But,
I thought I was watching G-Force. Yeah.
I really liked that show growing up, Top Cats. That was one that my brother and I watched all the time on Saturday morning.
That was a good one. I can't argue. So you guys have forgotten a show. I was sure someone was going to mention it, and yet
Captain
somehow no one
Planet.
did. Well, I wasn't going to say Captain Planet, Jacob.
The Tick. Oh my god.
How are we talking about 90s cartoons about superheroes and no one mentions the Tick?
You asked for our favorite and our least favorite. It just
Is this just right in the middle then?
The
for all you
Tick is
guys?
like right in the middle. It is everything to love and hate about superheroes because it is ostensibly parody and satire of the genre.
Mhm.
before we were drowning in parody and satire of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Tick was a little too early.
I think the Tick was terrific. I think it's terrific because we weren't drowning in parody and satire. Like at this point, it would be passe. But at the time, it I think isn't it Ben Edlund?
Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
Edlund.
there's been Edlund.
Right?
Yeah, he did the comic first, and then from that he did the
Yep.
cartoon, and then he got snatched up by Joss Whedon to be a writer on Buffy, and now he's been in Hollywood for a couple decades. So.
Isn't he the guy behind Supernatural?
That is somebody else who is behind the boys now.
Gotcha.
Oh, Robert Kripke?
Oh, I think that's right. Yeah.
Supernatural.
No. Kirkman is
Or
Walking
Eric
Dead.
Kripke.
Kripke. It's Eric Kripke.
Yeah.
Eric Kripke.
Got it.
Robert Kirkman, Eric Kripke.
I still have lines from the Tick cartoon that I could spout off from. So again, stuff that just welded its way into the brain and still hasn't knocked. I am a
Yeah.
very big man. You are a very small monkey. Big man, small monkey.
I gotta tell you though, if you told me that Kripke was a secret identity of Joss Whedon, and no one seen him in the same place at the same time, I wouldn't argue with you too strenuously because look at that guy.
But yeah, when you bring up the Tick, there's always going to be shows from the 90s that are generally beloved, but are not necessarily everyone's favorites. You know, Powerpuff Girls.
That from the 90s?
Is that
Yep.
the 90s?
Powerpuff
Yeah,
Girls
yeah, I
was
think it
was a powerhouse of the 90s era, and everyone liked it. You know, it's not it's certainly not people's favorite, but it was good.
I think Dexter's Lab may have been my favorite supervillain show of the 90s.
If we're going in this direction, then can we bring on Space Ghost Coast to Coast and Aqua Teen Hunger Force into the conversation? I mean,
I gave you Space Ghost. I might have to argue with you on Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but
originally, the person who created Powerpuff Girls, I found this on the internet, so obviously this may all be false, but it was originally going to be called the Kick-Ass Girls, and the ingredients was going to be, instead of Element X, Kick-Ass. And the guy who wrote it kind of wrote that with he was always aware that they were going to need to change that if they were going to actually put it on TV, but he figured it was going to catch attention the way it is, and then they would swap it out with whatever they wanted. But originally it was the Kick-Ass Girls, and it was, not sugar and spice, but rather a thing of kick-ass.
All right,
Professor
guys.
Utonium added a secret ingredient: 1 can of whip-ass.
And for those who don't remember, the best episode of that whole show is where Mojo Jojo is just doing nothing at home, and the Powerpuff Girls preemptively break in and kick his ass for whatever he's doing. It's amazing.
Oh my god.
That's great superhero parody right there.
There was one episode in which they got captured by a guy who collected Powerpuff Girls memorabilia, and boy, they really nailed the whole personality of the shut-in collector there in that one.
Yeah, my favorite Powerpuff Girls lore is Mojo Jojo is voiced by the same guy who does Ghostface in Scream.
Oh wow!
Roger L. Jackson is Mojo Jojo.
I thought it was Mako.
I am very surprised there hasn't been an attempt to do a live-action adaptation of Powerpuff Girls.
I think there was one that was in the works recently. I might have dreamt that in a fever.
Oh, I've seen some.
I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that was in the works, and the last few years, a bunch of stuff probably got the brakes slammed on it pretty hard, would be my assumption.
Well, I mean, for a while, people were acting like superhero movies were licensed to print money, and then Marvel Phase 4.5 happened, and they realized maybe not so much. So, but I need to apologize to you guys. We were yanked off YouTube for about 2 minutes. Someone just texted me and let me know. I was playing these cartoon intros silently in the background just to illustrate our points, and we got a copyright violation from YouTube for doing that. So some of our witty banter was, alas, not seen by the public at large. So sorry about that.
Oh.
And curse you, YouTube, my arch rival. I should really learn. Last time I had a show, I was playing movie trailers, which I figured would be fair use because it's an ad for the movie we're talking about. It's, but
We're not playing any music.
we're not. It was all fun, so I figured we were okay.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm just now at this point just going to hum and see if I can get that live thing to go dark.
Okay, so there was a scrapped reiteration of the Powerpuff Girls live-action TV show in 2020. They attempted to make it, but fell apart.
Yeah, I thought it was really recently.
Yeah, and it
Although
had,
the whole span of time from
and
2020 to
Cameron.
now feels like 1 year.
It's amazing some of the. I mean, we talked about Batgirl earlier tonight. The guy who did Powerpuff Girls, Genndy Tartakovsky, in 2016, released a trailer for like a Pixar quality Popeye movie. And if you get a chance to see it, it's pretty good. It's still on YouTube. I'm not going to play it because I'd like to continue broadcasting. But yeah, they just canned it. They were well into the development cycle, and just now not going to release it. So it is a bummer it happens. Speaking of Tartakovsky, I was going to claim Samurai Jack as my favorite 90s movie, but it didn't start till 2000, so I cannot do that. Has everyone done their worst and best?
Yes.
All right. My wacky opinion that I shared with you guys before the show, so no one probably cares anymore, but Tim and Denis, the guys who did Justice League and Batman and Superman, also created Freakazoid for Steven Spielberg. So I'm going to suggest that Freakazoid is sort of the redheaded stepchild of the Timverse. You know, it's kind of like the DC animated version of Deadpool, which I guess would also be Ambush Bug. Freakazoid.
Take that, Ambush Bug.
Huh?
I said, "Oh, take that, Ambush Bug."
Take that, Ambush Bug.
He's supposed to be the Creeper.
Who's supposed to be Ambush Bug or Freakazoid?
No, Freakazoid.
He was supposed to be the Creeper. Why wasn't
he? He's supposed to be. He was based on the Creeper. The idea of just being, he's one of those weird superheroes who is just weird because of what happened to them during their superhero origin. And some people can handle the weirdness, some people can't.
Hey, I'm getting a text from an audience member.
Oh.
Who is saying you guys suck? You don't remember Earthworm Jim?
I remember Earthworm Jim. I had the Earthworm Jim PlayStation game.
Is Earthworm Jim a superhero?
I count Earthworm Jim as a sci-fi space adventure, not a superhero, which is why I didn't put Captain Simeon and what was it? Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys or something like that, because I love that show.
Yeah,
I was in a
Flash
band.
Gordon, a superhero? I guess that's the question.
Well, I mean, Adam Strange in DC Comics, he hangs out with Batman and Superman and Scott Free, but yeah, he's basically Earthworm Jim if he was a human. So yeah, I don't know.
I think he would be way better if he was a worm.
So many things would be so much better if they were worms.
True.
It's the comic book version of "Would You Still Love Me If I Was a Worm?"
Imagine Law and Order, but everyone's worms.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me you wouldn't watch at least 15 minutes of that.
I'm here for that. Clunk, let's go.
All right. That's my big stupid 90s opinion. Len, do you have a big stupid hot take, cold take?
I have so many big stupid takes on so many things, but I guess the general crazy conspiracy theory, which I know is not mine, is that the TV show Gargoyles is actually an ongoing holodeck adventure, which is why everyone from Star Trek Next Generation does voices on Gargoyles. There you go. But that's out there on the internet and posed in a much better way than I can. However, the actual, I don't know if this is, I don't know how weird this is, but I think the 90s cartoons that we're talking about now are an essential turning point for the superheroes we have right now. Because I think without those cartoons, the 80s cartoons were the toy ads, and the 80s superheroes were the comic books. Remember, in the 70s, we had like the TV shows that were like very tongue-in-cheek and whatnot, with the exception of the Hulk, and even that one was like, the 80s is where the comic books started to get kind of like serious, and we started the Iron Age going into that, but or the end of the 80s into the 90s. But in terms of TV and media, none of it wasn't there. The movies weren't there. There wasn't call for it. And I think the cartoons kind of provide us this nice transition. So I don't think they were just for kids. I think they were older people, in their 20s and even early 30s who were watching these cartoons. Basically the Adult Swim crowd. And I think that facilitated the transition until the time when the live action superhero stuff could really start taking off. And I don't think it would have without that interstitial period that the 90s cartoons serve to sort of provide.
That's fair, and I like to use an interstitial, sir. That's we haven't heard from your Alex in the conversation. Jacob, do you have a hot take, a cold take, a big dumb opinion you want to share on 90s cartoons?
Nothing that I can really think of. My post-sick adult brain is not working that finely.
Okay. Alex.
Just building on the Gargoyles holodeck idea, I think that means Riker is the GM of the game they're playing because he's playing the main villain. So I'm into that.
I'm into that. I gotta tell you, I would subscribe to Paramount Plus once again if I could just watch a series of TNG actors in character. Instead of playing poker, they're playing D&D, in 10 forward or whatever.
And the D&D is Gargoyles.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'd be there. Or meeting some masterminds.
Yeah, I think on not necessarily a hot take, but a real personal level, I wouldn't be in this industry without these cartoons. So I really appreciate that this was an art renaissance that happened. Literally, the adventure I ran for Steve that got me my job at M&M was the plot line of a Justice League Unlimited episode that I reworked into a game that I was running at a convention he was at. So,
which one?
The one where the Suicide Squad breaks onto the Watchtower. I ran that game and Steve played Deadshot. It was great. Except I made it so that they were trying to steal a Mazo back from the Justice League after they deactivated it before, so Amanda Waller wouldn't get caught having commissioned a Mazo.
That's fair. So, I like that idea.
They got to pose as Justice League employees because that was one thing I noticed on the Watchtower was there are all these just people walking around the Watchtower like the maintenance crew.
So. Well, you need a lot of staff for a thing operation that big.
Yeah. It's a shame how many contractors Batman killed after they built the Batcave for him. That's my hot take. Batman killed all those contractors after they got the Batcave ready for him.
Maybe he just renditioned them to an El Salvador and Supermax, and they're living out the rest of their lives there because Batman doesn't kill.
Right.
So.
Where they can be happy and play with the other contractors in the El Salvadorian death camp.
There's a Family Guy meme out there about this, but we can't play it. So.
No, we can't. Even more of a bummer. I just found the intro to the 1990s Savage Dragon cartoon, and I can't play that because.
Oh my god! I completely forgot about that.
That was one I missed.
Yeah,
another one.
That comic is still being published. It's like one of the.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah, I thought it went away, but it's been every month for like 30 years. They've been publishing.
Holy mackerel!
Yeah.
Is it still Larson drawing it?
Still Larson every month in and out. You guys are machines.
Wow.
And say what you want, but Deed loves what he's doing. So
very much. I loved that comic for a long time because it was so fun. It was just like idiot villain. I'm gonna kick their ass. It's really fairly simple.
What more do you need?
It's a reliable formula. Bill, do you have a big dumb opinion, a hot cake, a cold take, not cake? But if you have a cake, I would be happy to share.
A cake? Yeah, no, I don't have a cake. But I will point out that there is a 90s cartoon that involved a superhero bunny, and it was Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars.
The fuck?
Anyone remember that one?
Tell me about this one.
I am not familiar with this.
Well, because you're not addicted to rabbits like I am. It lasted like half a season, just like my other Wildcats favorite.
Oh God! You just activated like a core memory.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, but it did have a green
the comic book.
Rabbit. Yeah, it was based on the comic.
Yeah, Larry Hama.
Oh, it was Larry Hama? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He wrote the Marvel G.I. Joe. Like all the G.I. Joe lore that doesn't suck is Larry Hama. That's wow. I
didn't realize that he wrote Bucky O'Hare too. The comic book was actually pretty good, but the cartoon was terrible.
As is so often the case, unfortunately. But,
it was an arcade game also.
Yeah, it was a
Was it an
transmedia.
arcade game too?
Yeah,
Or by
yeah,
Konami.
yeah.
That's where I've seen this rabbit before.
No,
Yeah.
Konami.
Well,
I actually had to do a speech in my sophomore year. I was taking a speech class, a public speaking class, and I had to do a speech on a piece of pop culture, and I did it on Bucky O'Hare, and the teacher had no idea he was like, I don't even know how to grade you on this.
I remember seeing this back in the 90s, but I hadn't realized it had a cartoon adaptation, a comic book, and a video game. So this was, yeah. Bucky O'Hare was more successful than anything I'll ever write, and that's humbling knowledge to have. But all right, well, I think we have we gone for about an hour. I think we've pretty much ridden this horse into the ground. What do you guys think? Any closing thoughts on 90s superhero comics or RPG or cartoons or RPGs?
I think the trick about the 90s cartoons especially is trying to turn them into games like Alex did. Those cartoons were very I mean, I guess it's all story driven, but because they were in condensed, contained 30-minute story arcs, they really were about what happens as a result of the story. The powers don't really matter. I mean, they do, but at the end of the day, what happens not because someone can fly or can punch through walls or whatever, but because of the story, the demands of the underlying drama are what moves things from A to B to C. And remember, when you're playing a game, it's a game, not a story. It's related to a story, but you're still playing a game. There's differences. So don't worry if you don't necessarily capture that every session.
You know, Jeff D posted something very similar earlier today on social media about the difference between games and stories, and how you shouldn't confuse the two of them too much. So, Alex, you seem to be having deep thoughts there, sir. Do you have any closing?
Yeah, I really like what Len just said, but I think the other thing I think they get really, really right is they respect the characters, but they're not afraid to have fun. But it's not at the expense of superheroes as a genre. It's not dumbing it down. It is these characters are going through this interesting scenario, and they happen to be superheroes. And I think there's a lot that people can take when they're designing superhero adventures in that vein for storytelling purposes.
That is good advice. Bill, closing thoughts?
When I was writing my Blood and Justice universe for Prowlers and Paragons, I was heavily influenced by the Batman the Animated Series, and by especially by Batman Beyond. So yeah, these cartoons are still resonating with me even today, 25, 30 years later.
Yeah, I used to write a bunch of superhero adventures for my company, Fading Goat Games. I don't have a tiny URL to share, but we're out there. I did a ton of Mutants and Masterminds and Icons adventures back in the day, and yeah, a lot of my inspiration was Justice League cartoons, because I love to watch them. I was rewatching them, and they all have really fun plots that can go in different ways. So, and I think that might have been one of the best. They had a two-parter, Star-Crossed, that was Thanagar Invades Earth, and I think it might have been one of the best. Although they had a couple super alien invasion plot lines in Justice League.
Yeah,
that might have been the most relevant Thanagar has been to the DCU like ever. They're just out there in space, Arkansas, fighting with Ran occasionally, and that's pretty much it. But when they show up on your doorstep and want to build a highway through your planet, it's a lot more important. So
that's what I love about the DC universe is they have so much expanse that there are just wasted opportunities, like Batman Beyond or Thanagar. Or
it's there is so much they could do, Alex, but they keep. I mean, let's make some more Batman shows. Let's make some more. Hey, let's reboot Legion of Superheroes one more time when there's a lot of other characters who can maybe use some spotlight time who haven't gotten any in a couple decades. So
I am glad James Gunn is doing a Superman movie and a Creature Commandos cartoon.
I love that cartoon. That was so much fun.
It's a group I want to write scenarios for. Like, that's how I know I enjoyed it, is like, oh, I want to pick these characters and I want to see what kind of stories we could tell in gaming with them.
Yeah, we've got a friend, Eric Bloat. He did a Black Hack game called The Monsters Are Our Heroes, and Jacob actually wrote is it fair to say it was a Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or the World's Inspired Adventure?
Yeah, it basically makes those.
Yeah, it was fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what James Gunn does. But if he wanted to stop everything tomorrow and say, "I'm making a Buona Beast movie," I would be there, opening week. To check it out. Or Adam Strange, or Scott Free, or Booster Gold, or there's a lot of other characters who, like you say, missed opportunities. There's so many things you can do with them.
Yeah.
We keep getting the same 5 or 6 guys. Jacob, are you dying?
The new Superman was the second time I felt old on the internet, because the actor they cast to play Superman is younger than me.
Yeah, that's always kind of a moment, isn't it?
So, sweet summer child.
I was like, I'm not old enough to be Superman. I'm not mature or responsible enough for that responsibility.
God damn it, Captain Kirk was
one of the things I always loved about
my age. Say, what was that?
One of the things I always loved about the Grant Morrison when he was writing for DC is that he would always reach deep into the freezer and pull out. He brought back Buona Beast. He pulled out the Inferior 5 for a few issues.
I really wish they would do his JLA run or bits and pieces of it, as a movie or cartoon, because he had some really fun stuff. Heck, you could just do that one episode where what's his name? The Key takes over the satellite, and it's just 90s Green Arrow, Connor Hawk, is the only one left not, subdued, and he somehow manages to save the day with an old boxing glove arrow he pulls out of the museum section of the spaceship.
Hell yeah. That's what's up.
Yeah, that was great. All right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate everyone coming out to talk. This was a good time, good way to spend an hour on a Friday night. I'm going to show everyone's links one more time because I am a shameless shill. So you can find Prowlers and Paragons at MobiusWorldPublishing.com. That is Len's game. It's a lot of fun. I've played it. Check it out. Alex works for Mutants and Masterminds. GreenRonin.com/collections/Mutants-Masterminds.
Yep. And if you're coming to Columbus in a couple months, I'll be running Mutants and Masterminds at Origins Game Fair, including such hits as Harley Quinn the Musical and Brotherhood of Steel, or Brotherhood of Mutants: Shadows of the Sentinel. So come hang out and play some fun M&M with me.
Sweet. And I don't have a link for it, but I neglected to pimp Jacob stuff. Jacob has a long series he's been doing for Mutants and Masterminds called Superpowered Legends, which is essentially Marvel for M&M. You can find that on the Rogue Genius Games page on DriveThruRPG. And last but certainly not least, Bill, tinyurl.com/harmlessforestcreature takes you to his DriveThruRPG page, where Bill has a lot of cool adventures and settings for Prowlers and Paragons. You should check it out. And with that happy note, I think we're ready to wrap it up. You guys good?
All right.
All right, cool. All right, thanks for coming out. And folks, we will see you next time on the BAMF Podcast.
Bye.